Its common name is curacao bush. It is typically found in the Florida Keys. It really doesn't naturally grow much more north than that. It likes the rocky soils down there when it comes to propagation, but it does quite well in varying other habitats up more North Florida into Central Florida. I would usually be concerned about winter with it being planted in Central Florida, but given the microclimate here at the Genius Preserve, it should do all right. There's a large specimen growing on the Rollins campus right there behind our building, between where the old greenhouse used to be. It is often swarmed with bees. This plant itself doesn't have any flowers yet. It is still quite young and getting used to its new planted location. It was maybe a foot when I first planted it, but these things do grow very fast. It reminds me a lot of the Calicarpa americana, also known as the beautyberry, just in that it's very fast and leggy if it's not trimmed back. It has a thin papery leaves as well, pretty similar to the beautyberry. Once it does start blooming, you'll see little white flower inflorescences. They're really inconspicuous unless you're right up there next to the plant, but the pollinators do love them. As I said, they're often seen swarmed by bees. This is actually also listed as threatened by the state of Florida just because of the rarity of them in Florida, given that they only occur in the Keys naturally. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting plant, fast grower, and I have it planted right at the edge of the cedar grove, kind of getting back towards the Dinky rail line trail. So it's got typically full sun, maybe a little bit of afternoon shade with a cedar right here, but for the most part it's blasted by the heat throughout the day, and it seems to be doing pretty well. The coral bean, as the name suggests, it is in the bean family, which is common with these pinnately compounded leaves right here. So this right here is a single leaf. It's got the 3 leaflets, trifoliate. One cool thing about the leaves, actually, you can kind of tell from this angle that the leaves are kind of folded up, and that is a way to preserve water and avoid heat stress. So throughout the day, the angles of the leaves will change, whichever way they find best suited for them. Also, you can kind of see have little thorns. They can get pretty bad when they're older, but yeah, pretty cool native plant. Typically found coastal areas, but they do creep more mainland, inland in the state. Not found too far north. I'd say probably stops about the Ocala area, but very common down throughout South Florida and the Keys. It's a deciduous plant. It drops all of its leaves towards late winter, and after it drops its leaves, you start to see pretty red flowers, often a favorite of hummingbirds, and they also attract birds with the large red beans that they produce. The beans are actually used for jewelry in Mexico. It's a pretty common jewelry seed. Yeah, this is the coral bean. It's in the same family as eucalyptus. It's a Florida native. It's also threatened. It's found, like most of the other ones, mainly coastal, but like I said, given the microclimate here at Genius Preserve, surrounded by 3 lakes, it really shouldn't have a problem in winter time given the microclimate. This thing has really pretty red, flaky bark. It's a slow grower. This can get to heights of probably 10 to 15 feet eventually, but that'll be years and years down the road. This thing by itself is probably over a year old. I planted at Genius maybe 5 months ago, but I had it growing for quite some time. It has citrus-like little fruit, maybe the size of, I don't know, almonds or something like that. Not too big, but like I said, they have a citrusy taste. They are edible to humans, but birds also enjoy them. They have really pretty white flowers as well that also remind me of citrus. But yeah, this is the Simpson stopper. It's growing in partial shade, doesn't get too much sunlight throughout the day. As you can see, we got a bunch of oaks and cedars surrounding. But this does grow in part shade to full sun, so it won't have an issue. Might not grow as dense when it comes to the foliage as one that is in full sun, but like I said, it shouldn't affect it too much. But yeah, this one's also similar to the curacao bush. This one is threatened when it comes to growth in the wild, but really not too much cause for alarm when it comes to the plant's existence, because it is very common when it comes to cultivation. You do see it lots of times as hedges for businesses and stuff like that. So, a pretty cool plant. The southern red cedar, it's grown right here next to this very active gopher tortoise burrow. For those of you who don't know, gopher tortoises are actually threatened in the state of Florida. Their habitat's being destroyed very, very rapidly. It's quite sad. Population is quickly declining due to development, but we are lucky to have them here at the Genius Preserve, so really do appreciate them. And yeah, back to the tree itself, the southern red cedar is actually not even a cedar. That's a misnomer. Its scientific name is Juniperus virginiana. So as the genus describes, it is a juniper actually. It's Florida native, found all over the state. It is Christmas tree shaped, wants to get some mature size. This one's still a pretty young one. It does get to about 40-45 feet. It's a fast grower as well. I'd say within 3 or 4 years this little thing will probably be about 10 feet. You can see these are what the leaves look like when they're young. Very needle-like. These things can actually prick you, especially when they dry out. This is what the leaves look like after about 4 years age. They'll start to get lacy like this, not prickly. So that's what the leaves look like at a young age. And this one's maybe about a year old. I saved this one from construction site. It was only a couple inches big, and yeah, this is what it's grown to within about a year and a half maybe. I planted this one. This one's in partial shade, but it grows just about anywhere. I wanted to fill in this little gap we have here. So we have a little cedar right there. You can't really see it. We have a little cedar right there. Have another little one right here. So try to just fill in this gap, kind of deter some of these weeds from growing. So yeah, that's the southern red cedar. Wetland plants. You can see the lake back there. So these trees typically grow, as you would guess, in very wet soils, water table a lot higher than the previous ones that I've been showing you. So here we have the sweet bay magnolia tree. These are in the same genus actually as the southern magnolia. This is a very common tree growing in the central Florida to North Florida area. This one is Magnolia virginiana. It is actually a plant that you can use as spice, just like the bay leaves that you use for food. This one could be used the same way. Has a very nice fragrance to the leaves. Really common identification characteristic with this one when it's not blooming, it's the very white underleaf to it. This one I have planted right on the Dinky Line Trail, and the flowers for this one are just like the southern magnolia, very large white flowers. We just missed the blooming season. This probably would have been blooming probably a month or two ago. We have some larger ones growing back. You can kind of see the white leaf back there. We have some that have already been planted here, but we are trying to fill in some of these gaps, as you can see we have here. We planted 4 of these in total. The other 3 are closer down to the lake. Actually, we have one right over there. The other 2 are down by the lake. So yeah, this is the sweet bay magnolia. And lastly, we have dicycum, also known as the bald cypress. This tree is very, very common throughout the state, often seen on roadsides, near ditches, or surrounding lakes. It likes the soil very wet. Probably seen the cypress knees before. I don't know if I see any around here. Actually, yeah, there's a bunch of cypress knees. That's a evolutionary characteristic often shown by this tree. Nobody knows quite for certain what that's for, if it's just kind of to anchor them down with the wet soils, or if it helps with oxygen transfer. But yeah, that's a very common identifiable characteristic of this plant. Often known as the tallest trees in Florida. We have huge ones, at least 100 feet here. I believe just about all of the top 10 tallest trees in Florida are bald cypresses. This tree is a deciduous, it's a conifer, very fast growing. It'll drop its leaves early winter and have them back probably around February, March. This one it's actually been chopped in half accidentally by a cleaning crew once, a couple of months ago. You might be able to see down here is where it had been chopped in half, but it's already quickly retained its height, full foliage again. Really can't even tell. I planted that one and also a much smaller one over here by these little elderberries. Just like most of the other ones, just trying to fill in these gaps. We finally have this area under control when it comes to the invasives for the most part. Really no more Caesar weed, which is the dominant plant down here, probably just about 6 months ago. And we're trying to control the growth of that by shading them out with the bald cypresses. So yeah, this is a small one that I had planted maybe a couple months ago. I moved it, it was buried in all these ferns down here, it wasn't gonna survive, so I potted it up, had the roots start growing again, and dropped it in right here. Healthy looking, full of leaves. So yeah, that's the Taxodium dicycum, also known as the bald cypress.